How are you guys doing? Today is Tuesday, April 6th, 2021, out here in this quarantine. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to review the Elite matchups and performances from yesterday, Monday, April 5th, and of course, I'm going to preview everything that's going on today as we navigate through the world of sports one day at a time. I'm going to start off with the very last college basketball game for about another 5-6 months in the men's basketball national championship. 1 seed Baylor out of the Big 12 was able to beat number 1 seed Gonzaga, who came out of the West Coast Conference as the champions. They came into this game completely undefeated and were blown away by Baylor's just amazing defense and just relentless play from the beginning to the end of the game. The Baylor Bears would outscore the Gonzaga Bulldogs 47-37 in the first half and then 39-33 in the second half to win this game by 16. They won it 86-70. For Gonzaga, in their final game of the season, their leading scorer was their freshman guard, Jalen Suggs, who finished with 22 points and 3 assists in 33 minutes as he shot 8 for 15 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, and 4 for 6 from the foul line. Alongside him in the starting lineup, their other two, their All-American guard, Jay Ajayi, would finish with 8 points in 31 minutes, shooting 3 for 5 from the field. Their All-American forward, Corey Kispert, would finish with 12 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists in 38 minutes as he shot 5 for 12 from the field and 2 for 7 from 3. And then their All-American forward, Drew Timme, would finish with 12 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 blocks, as well as 5 turnovers in 33 minutes as he shot 5 for 7 from the field and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. And for the Baylor Bears in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their guard, Jared Butler. He finished with 22 points on the night, 3 rebounds and 7 assists as well in 31 minutes. He shot 6 for 14 from the field, 4 for 9 from 3, and a perfect 6 for 6 from the foul line. And after this game, he was nominated as the most outstanding player for the Final Four for the national championship. Alongside him in the starting lineup, their starting guard, Maceo Teague, would finish with 19 points in 31 minutes as he shot 8 for 15 from the field, 2 for 3 from 3, and 1 for 2 from the foul line. And their other guard, Davion Mitchell, would finish with 15 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists in 36 minutes as he shot 6 for 15 from the field, 1 for 4 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. With this win, the Baylor Bears, even though they did not win the Big 12 tournament, they did go on to win the national championship. And of course, this is their first ever men's basketball national championship as a basketball program. And with that said, that's the last we're going to hear of college basketball until October, November. Without further ado, I'm going to close the book on the 2021 March Madness bracket as 68 teams entered and only 1 team came out, Baylor. And just for a flex, I did have Baylor winning I had Baylor winning my bracket, the first bracket I made. But with that said and done, looking out to what's going on in the NBA, following yesterday's matchups. Starting off in Tampa Bay, the Toronto Raptors hosted the Washington Wizards. In this matchup, the Raptors would outscore the Wizards 28-15 by 13 in the fourth quarter to beat the Wizards 103-101. For the Washington Wizards in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting point guard, Russell Westbrook, who finished with 23 points, 14 rebounds, and 11 assists in 40 minutes as he shot 9 for 25 from the field, 1 for 6 from 3, and 4 for 4 from the foul line. For the Toronto Raptors in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting power forward, Pascal Siakam, who finished with 22 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals in 36 minutes as he shot 10 for 16 from the field and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. With this win, the Toronto Raptors are now 20-30. That is the 5th worst record in the Eastern Conference as they have now won their last 2 games. They've only won 3 of their last 10. They currently trail the 8th place New York Knicks by 4.5 games outside of the Eastern Conference playoff picture as they now sit 14.5 games behind the Brooklyn Nets. With this loss, the Washington Wizards are now 17-32. That is the 3rd worst record in the Eastern Conference. They have the worst streak in the Eastern Conference as they have now lost their last 4 games. They've lost 7 of their last 10. They currently sit 7 games behind the 8th place New York Knicks outside of the playoff picture, and they trail the 1st place Brooklyn Nets by 17 games in the conference. Jumping out to Brooklyn, the Brooklyn Nets hosted the New York Knicks And in this matchup, the Nets would beat their in-city rivals, the New York Knicks, 114-112. The big difference coming in the second quarter where they outscored the Knicks by 11 to gain momentum in the half. For the New York Knicks in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting shooting guard out of Duke, R.J. Barrett, who finished with 22 points and 5 turnovers in 33 minutes as he shot 7 for 13 from the field, 4 for 6 from 3, and a perfect 4 for 4 from the foul line. Their starting small forward, Reggie Bullock, would finish with 21 points in 31 minutes as he shot 6 for 11 from the field, 5 for 10 from 3, and 4 for 4 from the foul line. And then their all-star power forward, Julius Randle, would finish with 19 points, 15 rebounds, and 12 assists alongside 5 turnovers in 39 minutes as he shot 7 for 19 from the field and 5 for 6 from the foul line. For the Brooklyn Nets in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting point guard out of Duke, Kyrie Irving, who finished with 40 points, 2 rebounds, and 7 assists in 37 minutes as he shot 15 for 28 from the field, 5 for 12 from 3, and a perfect 5 for 5 from the line. Their elite starting shooting guard, James Harden, would only play 4 minutes. He would only log 3 assists in those 4 minutes as he shot 0 for 1 from the field. And then their starting power forward, Jeff Green, would finish with 23 points in 36 minutes as he shot 6 for 15 from the field and 9 for 13 from the foul line. With this win, the Brooklyn Nets are now the sole holders for the best record in the Eastern Conference as they now sit half a game ahead of the second place Philadelphia 76ers as they have now won 7 of their last 10 games. Like I said, in the Eastern Conference, they now sit half a game ahead of the Philadelphia 76ers with the best record in the conference. With this loss, the New York Knicks are now 25-26. That is the 8th best record in the Eastern Conference as they have now lost 5 of their last 10 games. In the Eastern Conference playoff picture, they now trail the 7th place Boston Celtics by half a game. And they sit a game and a half ahead of the 9th place Indiana Pacers, who are on the outside looking in. And overall, the New York Knicks now trail the Brooklyn Nets by 10 games in the Eastern Conference with this loss. Looking out to Dallas, the Dallas Mavericks hosted the Utah Jazz, who currently hold the best record in the Western Conference. In this matchup, the Mavericks were able to beat the Utah Jazz 111-103. The difference being the middle quarters. They outscored the Utah Jazz by 6 in the second quarter, and they outscored them 37-27 in the third. For the Utah Jazz in this matchup, their all-star point guard Mike Conley would lead the team in scoring as he finished with 28 points, 3 rebounds, and 7 assists in 31 minutes as he shot 8 for 13 from the field, 6 for 10 from 3, and a perfect 6 for 6 from the foul line. Their elite starting shooting guard Donovan Mitchell would finish with 16 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists in 35 minutes as he shot 6 for 23 from the field and 4 for 6 from the foul line. And their elite starting center Rudy Gobert would finish with 14 points, 15 rebounds, 2 assists and 2 blocks in 34 minutes as he shot a perfect 6 for 6 from the field and 2 for 3 from the foul line. For the Dallas Mavericks in this matchup, their elite starting point guard Luka Doncic would lead the entire game in scoring as he finished with 31 points, 9 rebounds, and 8 assists in 36 minutes as he went on to shoot 11 for 26 from the field, 6 for 11 from 3, and a perfect 3 for 3 from the foul line. Their starting power forward, Dorian Finney-Smith, would finish with 23 points and 6 rebounds in 34 minutes as he shot 8 for 17 from the field, 5 for 12 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. And off the bench for the Dallas Mavericks, their point guard, Jalen Brunson, would finish with 20 points in 30 minutes as he shot 8 for 15 from the field and 4 for 7 from 3. With this win, the Dallas Mavericks are now 28-21. That is the 7th best record in the Western Conference as they have now won their last 5 games and 7 of their last 10. In the playoff picture, they now sit 2 games behind the 6th place Portland Trailblazers, and they sit 3 games ahead of the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies, who are just on the edge of the Western Conference playoff picture. And overall, the Dallas Mavericks sit 9.5 games behind the 1st place Utah Jazz out west. Speaking of the Jazz, with this loss, they are now 38-12. That is still the best record in the NBA. They have 3 more wins than the Suns and the Nets. They sit 2.5 games ahead of the 2nd place Phoenix Suns, just to show where they are. As with this loss, they've only lost 1 of their last 10 games, just to show how hot the Jazz have been. Jumping out to Minnesota, the Minnesota Timberwolves hosted the Sacramento Kings and were able to pull off a 116-106 win at home after they came into the 4th quarter completely tied up. For the Kings in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting point guard out of Kentucky, De'Aaron Fox, who finished with 31 points, 6 rebounds, 9 assists, and 2 steals in 38 minutes, as he shot 8 for 16 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, and 13 for 15 from the foul line. Alongside him in the starting lineup, their starting small forward out of UNC, Harrison Barnes, would finish with 21 points, 12 rebounds, and 2 steals in 37 minutes, as he shot 9 for 14 from the field and 3 for 4 from the foul line. For the Minnesota Timberwolves in this matchup, their leading scorer will come off the bench as their elite point guard D'Angelo Russell would finish with 25 points, 5 rebounds, and 3 assists in 24 minutes, as he shot 7 for 19 from the field, 4 for 7 from 3, and 7 for 9 from the foul line. And then out of their starters, their elite starting center, Karl Anthony Towns, would finish with 23 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 steals in 36 minutes, as he shot 8 for 18 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, and a perfect 5 for 5 from the foul line. With this win, the Minnesota Timberwolves are now 13-38. That is still the worst record in the Western Conference, as they have now won 3 of their last 10. They currently sit 13 games behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies outside of the playoff picture, and they trail the Utah Jazz by 25.5 games in the conference. With this loss, the Sacramento Kings are now 22-29. That is the 4th worst record in the Western Conference, as they have now lost their last 4 games. That is the 2nd worst streak in the Western Conference out of the 15 teams. They have lost 5 of their last 10 games. They currently sit 4 games behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies out of the playoff picture, as they now trail the 1st place Utah Jazz by 16.5 games in the conference. Jumping out to Oklahoma City, the Oklahoma City Thunder hosted the Detroit Pistons, and the Detroit Pistons were able to beat the Oklahoma City Thunder 132-108. They outscored OKC by 11 in the first quarter, and they outscored them by 13 in the second half. For the Oklahoma City Thunder in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting power forward, Aleksej Pokusevski, who would finish with 19 points on the day and 2 blocks in 32 minutes, as he shot 8 for 19 from the field, 2 for 6 from 3, and 1 for 1 from the foul line. The leading scorer for the day was the Detroit Pistons starting small forward Jeremy Grant, who finished with 21 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists in 23 minutes, as he shot 7 for 15 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, and a perfect 5 for 5 from the foul line. With this win, the Detroit Pistons are now 15-35. That is the worst record in the Eastern Conference. And looking out, they have the third most losses so far in the NBA this season. With this win, they have won 4 of their last 10 games. They sit 9.5 games behind the 8th place New York Knicks outside of the playoff picture, as they trail the 1st place Brooklyn Nets by 19.5 games in the conference. And then with this loss, the Oklahoma City Thunder are now 20-30. That is the 3rd worst record in the Western Conference. They are the 4th. No, they are not the 4th. They are officially the 8th team to lose 30 games so far this season. Sorry if I butchered the math there. They have lost their last 3 games in 7 of their last 10. They now currently sit 5.5 games behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies outside of the playoff picture, as they now trail the Utah Jazz by 18 games in the Western Conference. Jumping out to San Antonio, the San Antonio Spurs hosted the Cleveland Cavaliers. And in this matchup, the Cavs would beat the Spurs 125-101. Big difference coming in the middle quarters. The Cavs outscored the Spurs by 8 points in the second, and they outscored the Spurs by 10 in the third quarter, 18 in those 2 quarters. For the San Antonio Spurs in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting small forward, DeMar DeRozan, who finished with 20 points in 27 minutes, shooting 4 for 9 from the field and 12 for 13 from the foul line. For the Cleveland Cavaliers in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting point guard out of Vanderbilt, Darius Garland, who finished with 37 points, 7 assists, and 2 steals in 30 minutes, as he shot 14 for 22 from the field, 5 for 10 from 3, and a perfect 4 for 4 from the line. Alongside him in their starting lineup, Colin Sexton would finish with 22 points and 5 assists in 34 minutes, as he shot 7 for 17 from the field, 1 for 5 from 3, and 7 for 8 from the foul line. With this win, the Cleveland Cavaliers are now 18-32. In the Eastern Conference, that is the 4th worst record, as they have now only won 3 of their last 10 games. They sit 6.5 games behind the 8th place New York Knicks outside of the playoff picture, as they now trail the Brooklyn Nets by 16.5 games in the conference. With this loss, the San Antonio Spurs are now 24-24. That is the 9th best record in the Western Conference, as they have now lost their last 3 games. They've lost 8 of their last 10. They sit half a game behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies outside of the playoff picture, as they now trail the Utah Jazz by 13 games in the conference. That's currently where the Spurs sit. And last but not least, jumping out to Houston, the Houston Rockets hosted the Phoenix Suns. And in this matchup, the Suns were able to come back from being behind coming into the fourth quarter. They were trailing by 1. And no, that's actually not true. The Phoenix Suns outscored the Rockets by 10 in the first half. The Rockets tried to come back in the second half, but it wouldn't be enough as the Suns picked up their 35th win of the season. For the Houston Rockets in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their starting center, Christian Wood, who finished with 23 points in 33 minutes, shooting 8 for 21 from the field and 4 for 5 from the foul line. Their starting power forward out of Gonzaga, Kelly Olynyk, would finish with 21 points and 2 steals, as well as 5 turnovers in 29 minutes, as he shot 7 for 8 from the field, a perfect 3 for 3 from the three-point line, and 4 for 5 from the foul line. And then their starting shooting guard, Kevin Porter Jr. out of USC, would finish with 20 points, 9 rebounds, and 8 assists in 30 minutes, as he shot 5 for 10 from the field and 9 for 10 from the foul line. For the Phoenix Suns in this matchup, their leading scorer would be their elite starting shooting guard, Devin Booker, who finished with 36 points, 6 rebounds, and 6 assists in 36 minutes, as he shot 11 for 20 from the field, 6 for 8 from 3, and 8 for 9 from the foul line. Their starting center, DeAndre Ayton, would finish with 27 points, 11 rebounds, and 2 blocks in 33 minutes, as he shot 10 for 14 from the field and 7 for 8 from the foul line. Their starting small forward, Mikal Bridges, would finish with 20 points of his own, alongside 2 assists in 33 minutes. He shot 7 for 12 from the field, 4 for 6 from 3, and a perfect 2 for 2 from the foul line. And alongside those 3 starters in the lineup, their elite 11-time All-Star point guard, Chris Paul, would finish with 19 points, 5 rebounds, 11 assists, and 4 steals in 35 minutes, as he shot 6 for 9 from the field, 3 for 5 from 3, and 4 for 5 from the foul line. With this win, the Phoenix Suns are now 35-14. That is the second best record in the Western Conference. They have the best streak in the Western Conference as well, as they have now won their last 6 games. They've won 9 of their last 10. They now sit 2.5 games behind the first place Utah Jazz, following the Jazz loss last night. And they also sit 3 games ahead of the third place Los Angeles Clippers in the conference. And with this loss, the Houston Rockets are now 13-37. That is the second worst record in the Western Conference, as the Rockets have now lost their last 5 games. That is the worst streak in the conference thus far. They've now lost 8 of their last 10 games. They sit 12.5 games behind the 8th place Memphis Grizzlies in the outside of the playoff picture, and they now trail the Utah Jazz by 25 games in the conference thus far. So those are all the games from yesterday. That's currently how the NBA standings are sitting right now. Looking forward to what's going on today, starting with the primetime matchups at 7:30. The Boston Celtics, who are currently holding on to the Eastern Conference's 7th best record, are going to host the Philadelphia 76ers on TNT. The Sixers hold the 2nd best record in the Eastern Conference, as a win here could very well even them up with the Brooklyn Nets, because the Nets don't play today. And following that, the Golden State Warriors, who are sitting at 23-27, holding the Western Conference's 10th best record. They are going to host the Milwaukee Bucks on TNT. The Milwaukee Bucks are currently holding the Eastern Conference's 3rd best record, as they are only 2 games behind the first place Brooklyn Nets and a game and a half behind those Sixers. Outside of those games on primetime, at 7 o'clock, the Indiana Pacers are going to host the Chicago Bulls. At 7:30, the Atlanta Hawks are going to host the New Orleans Pelicans. The Toronto Raptors are going to host the defending champs LA Lakers in Tampa. At 8 o'clock, the reigning Eastern Conference champions Miami Heat are going to host the Memphis Grizzlies. At 9 o'clock, the Denver Nuggets are going to host the Detroit Pistons, who currently hold the Eastern Conference's worst record. And then at 10 o'clock, the Los Angeles Clippers, who are currently holding the Western Conference's 3rd best record, are going to host the Portland Trail Blazers, who are holding the Western Conference's 6th best record, or the 6th best record at the moment. So that's everything going on with basketball, especially with college basketball being over. Really quickly, I'm just going to look out to what's going on in the MLB, especially following yesterday's matchups. Starting off in Detroit, the Detroit Tigers hosted the Minnesota Twins. And in this matchup, the Twins would end up scoring 9 of their 15 runs in the 5th, 6th, and 7th inning, as Shoemaker would pick up his very first win of the season. This game was on prime time. For Detroit, the loss would go to Urena, as Urena gave up 5 earned runs in 3 innings pitched, as he struck out 5 batters. And for Detroit, their biggest batter was their center fielder, Akil Baddoo. Baddoo would finish 2 for 4 with 4 RBIs and a run, as he would end up hitting his second home run of the season in the 9th inning, which I think was a grand slam. But alongside him, Wilson Ramos also hit his first home run of the season for Detroit. For Minnesota in this matchup, the win would, of course, go to their starting pitcher, Matt Shoemaker. Shoemaker would allow 1 earned run in 6 innings pitched, as he struck out 5 batters. Their pinch-hitting third baseman, Willians Astudillo, would finish 3 for 4, as he finished with 2 RBIs and a run. Their elite designated hitter, Nelson Cruz, finished 3 for 6 with 5 RBIs and 3 runs, as he hit 2 home runs on the day. He now has 2 on the season. And with this win, the Minnesota Twins are now 15-6. With this record, the Minnesota Twins are now 3-1. They are now tied with the Kansas City Royals for the best record in the American League Central, 1 game ahead of the Detroit Tigers. And with this loss, the Tigers are now 2-2. They now hold the 3rd best record in the AL Central, as they now sit a game behind the Minnesota Twins and the Kansas City Royals. Speaking of the Kansas City Royals, the Royals went to Cleveland and were able to beat the Indians 3-0. In the 2nd inning, they would get a home run from their elite second baseman, Whit Merrifield, his 3rd of the season. He now leads the major league in home runs. And then Whit Merrifield would also have a sacrifice fly in the 3rd. He was the only player to drive in runs. For Cleveland, the loss would go to their starting pitcher, Logan Allen, who would pitch 5 innings and allowed 2 earned runs in those innings. He struck out 3. And then for Cleveland, their elite third baseman, Jose Ramirez, would go 1 for 4, as he struck out once. For the Kansas City Royals, the win would go to their starting pitcher, Danny Duffy. He's now 1-0 on the season. He allowed no earned runs. He only allowed 2 hits in 6 innings pitched, as he struck out 5 batters. And then for Kansas City, their elite second baseman, Whit Merrifield, would go 2 for 3 with 3 RBIs and a run on the day. And their shortstop, Nicky Lopez, would finish 2 for 3, as he was the only player with multiple hits for the Royals. With this win, the Royals, like I just said, sit on top of the AL Central alongside the Minnesota Twins at 3-1. With this loss, the Cleveland Indians are now 1-3, as they now trail the Minnesota Twins and Kansas City Royals by 2 games in the division. Jumping out to Dallas, the Texas Rangers hosted the Toronto Blue Jays. In this matchup, the Blue Jays would beat the Rangers 6-2, as 4 of their runs came in the first couple of innings. They would get a RBI single in the first inning from their elite first baseman, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Marcus Semien would hit his second home run of the game as well. The Rangers tried to come back at the end, but it eventually would not be enough for them. For the Texas Rangers, the only player with 2 hits was their shortstop, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who finished 2 for 4 with an RBI, or who finished 2 for 4 with a run, my bad. And then for Toronto, the win would go to their starting pitcher, Steven Matz. He's now 1-0 on the season. He allowed 1 earned run in 6.1 innings pitched. He only allowed 2 hits. He struck out 9 batters in those 6 innings pitched. Their second baseman, Marcus Semien, would go 2 for 5 with 2 RBIs and a run. Their elite designated hitter, Vladdy Guerrero Jr., would go 1 for 3 with an RBI and a run. And with this win, the Toronto Blue Jays are now 3-1 on the season. With this win, they are tied with the Baltimore Orioles for the best record in the American League East. And they also sit 1 game ahead of the New York Yankees and the Tampa Bay Rays. With this loss, the Texas Rangers are now 1-3, as they hold the 4th best record in the American League West. They now trail the Houston Astros and the Los Angeles Angels by 2.5 games in the division. Going out to Yankee Stadium, the New York Yankees were able to give the Baltimore Orioles their first loss of the season, as they were able to pull off a 7-0 win. They held the Orioles to 4 hits all game, as 5 of the Yankee runs would come in the 5th inning. And 4 of their runs in the 5th inning would come from their elite designated hitter, Giancarlo Stanton, whose first home run of the season was a grand slam. And also in the first inning, their elite outfielder, Aaron Judge, would hit his first home run of the season. And then the last RBI would come from their elite second baseman, DJ LeMahieu. For the Baltimore Orioles in this matchup, none of their players would really get more than one hit on the day, but overall, and their starting pitcher, Lopez would pitch 4.2 innings on the day. For the Yankees, the win would go to their starting pitcher, Jordan Montgomery, who allowed no earned runs and allowed only 4 hits in 6 innings pitched as he struck out 7 batters. For the Yankees, their elite second baseman, DJ LeMahieu, finished 1 for 3 with an RBI and a run. Their elite right fielder, Aaron Judge, would go 2 for 3 with an RBI and 2 runs on the day. Their elite designated hitter, Giancarlo, would go 1 for 4 with 4 RBIs and a run. And with this win, the New York Yankees are now 2-2. They now have the New York Yankees are now tied with the Tampa Bay Rays for the 3rd best record in the American League East, as they now trail the Orioles and the Blue Jays by a game in the division. And with this loss, the Baltimore Orioles are now 3-1, tied with the Toronto Blue Jays for the best record in the American League East. Jumping out to Cincinnati, the Cincinnati Reds hosted the Pittsburgh Pirates and were able to pull off a 5-3 win, as 3 of their runs came in the 7th and 8th inning. For the Pirates in this matchup, their only player that would finish with more than 1 hit would be their first baseman, Colin Moran. He finished 2 for 4 with an RBI and a run, as Colin Moran hit his 2nd home run of the season. For the Cincinnati Reds, their pitcher wouldn't even get the win, but the start would go to Jose Ponce de Leon, who allowed only 2 earned runs and 3 hits in 5 innings pitched as he struck out 9 batters on the day. Their right fielder, Nick Castellanos, would go 2 for 4 with an RBI and a run, as he hit his 3rd home run of the season. Their elite shortstop, Eugenio Suarez, would go 0 for 4 as he struck out twice. Their third baseman, Mike Moustakas, would go 2 for 3 with an RBI and a run as well. With this win, the Cincinnati Reds are now 3-1. They now have the best record in the National League Central alongside the Chicago Cubs, as both teams sit 1 game ahead of the St. Louis Cardinals at the moment. With this loss, the Pittsburgh Pirates are now tied with the Milwaukee Brewers for the worst record in the NL Central, as they now trail the Cincinnati Reds and the Chicago Cubs by 2 games in the division. Jumping out to Miami, the Miami Marlins hosted the St. Louis Cardinals. In this matchup, the Cardinals would win this game 4-1, as 3 of their 4 runs would come in the first inning. Yadier Molina would get the first double to bring 2 players home after a passed ball. And with this win, the Cardinals now have 2 wins on the season. For Miami, they didn't have a single player that finished with at least 1 hit on the day. For St. Louis, their elite first baseman, Paul Goldschmidt, would go 1 for 3 with a run. Their elite third baseman, Nolan Arenado, would go 2 for 4 on the day. And their future Hall of Fame catcher, Yadier Molina, would go 1 for 4 with 2 RBIs on the day. The win for the Cardinals would, of course, go to their starting pitcher, Daniel Ponce de Leon, as he allowed only 1 earned run in 5 innings pitched, and he struck out 3 batters in those 5 innings. With this win, the St. Louis Cardinals are now 2-2. They are now tied, or they're not tied. They now are sitting by themselves with the 3rd best record in the National League Central, as they now trail the Cincinnati Reds and the Chicago Cubs by 1 game in the division. And then with this loss, the Miami Marlins are now 1-3. They now hold the 3rd best record in the National League East, as they now trail the first place Philadelphia Phillies by 3 whole games in the division. Jumping out to Philadelphia, the Philadelphia Phillies were able to give the New York Mets their first loss of the season, as the Phillies won this game 3-1. All 5 of their runs would come in the 8th inning, as they were trailing for most of it. For the New York Mets in this matchup, the start would go to their elite starting pitcher, Jacob deGrom. He would allow no earned runs in the 6 innings that he pitched, as he struck out 7 batters. The loss would go to May, and then their elite shortstop, Francisco Lindor, would go 1 for 4 in his New York Mets debut. Their elite first baseman, Pete Alonso, would go 1 for 4 with a run for himself. And then Jacob deGrom, their elite starting pitcher as a hitter, would finish 2 for 3 with an RBI. For the Philadelphia Phillies in this matchup, their elite right fielder, Bryce Harper, would go 0 for 1 with an RBI and a run, as he would walk twice, and he finished with an RBI off of a walk. And other than him, no one on the Phillies, other than Rhys Hoskins, had more than 1 hit. But overall, with this win, the Philadelphia Phillies are now 4-0. They currently hold the best record in the National League East, as they sit 2 games ahead of the Washington Nationals, who still have yet to play a game. They are right now the only undefeated team remaining in baseball right now. So of course, hats off to the Phillies. With this loss, the New York Mets are now 0-1. They now hold the fourth best record in the National League East as they now trail the Philadelphia Phillies by 2.5 games total in the division. Jumping out to Boston, the Boston Red Sox hosted the Tampa Bay Rays and were able to pick up their first win of the season after they started a scoring onslaught from the fourth inning on. They won 11-2 to beat the Rays. For the Rays in this matchup, the loss would go to their starting pitcher, Michael Wacha, who allowed 4 earned runs in the 5 innings that he pitched as he struck out 6 batters in total. Their second baseman, Brandon Lau, would go 2 for 3. Their elite left fielder, Randy Arozarena, would go 2 for 3 with an RBI for himself. For Boston in this matchup, the win would go to their starting pitcher, Nick Pivetta, who would allow no earned runs and 2 hits in the 5 innings that he pitched as he struck out 4 batters. Their center fielder from LA, Alex Verdugo, would go 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs and a run. Their elite designated hitter, JD Martinez, would go 2 for 3 with 3 RBIs and 2 runs as JD Martinez hit his second home run of the season. Their shortstop, Xander Bogaerts, would go 4 for 5 with an RBI and a run for himself. Their catcher, Christian Vasquez, would go 2 for 4 with 2 runs. Their right fielder, Hunter Renfroe, would go 2 for 3 with an RBI and 2 runs, and then their left fielder, Franchi Cordero, would go 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs and 2 runs for himself. With this win, the Boston Red Sox are now 1-3. With their first win of the season, they still sit at the very bottom of the American League East as they trail the Baltimore Orioles and the Tampa Bay Rays by a game in the AL East. With this loss, the Tampa Bay Rays are now 2-2, tied with the New York Yankees for the 4th best record in the AL East, as they trail the Orioles and the Toronto Blue Jays by 1 game in the division. Jumping out to Chicago, the Chicago Cubs hosted the Milwaukee Brewers, and in this matchup, the Cubs would beat the Brewers 5-3 as 4 of their runs came in the 4th inning. In the 4th inning, they get 3 home runs from Wilson Contreras, their elite shortstop Javier Baez, and of course David Bote, and then an Eric Sogard triple would seal the win for them. For the Milwaukee Brewers in this matchup, the loss would go to their starting pitcher, Brett Anderson, who allowed 4 earned runs in 5 innings pitched as he struck out 4 batters. The reigning National League Rookie of the Year, Devin Williams, would sub in for 0.2 innings as he allowed an earned run in that time as well. Their elite left fielder, Christian Yelich, would go 0 for 3 with a run on the day, as the only player that really brought runs home was their catcher, Omar Narvaez, who finished 2 for 3 with 3 RBIs and a run. He hit his first home run of the season for them. For the Chicago Cubs, their elite shortstop, Javi Baez, would go 1 for 3 with an RBI and a run. He hit his first home run of the season, like I just said. And other than the home runs I just said, that was pretty much what was going on. And other than that, their elite right fielder, Chris Bryant, would go 0 for 3 with a walk and a strikeout. But with this win, the Chicago Cubs are now 3-1. They are now tied with the Cincinnati Reds for the best record in the National League Central, as they sit 1 game ahead of the St. Louis Cardinals. And with this loss, the Milwaukee Brewers are now 1-3, as they are tied with the Pirates for the worst record in the NL Central, as they trail the Cincinnati Reds and the Chicago Cubs by 2 games in the division. Jumping out to Anaheim, the Los Angeles Angels hosted the Houston Astros and were able to pull up a 7-6 win at home, as 4 of their runs came in the 8th inning, as they were trailing for most of the game. For the Houston Astros, their elite second baseman, Jose Altuve, would go 2 for 5 with an RBI and a run. Their elite third baseman, Alex Bregman, would go 2 for 5 with an RBI and a run for himself. The right fielder, Kyle Tucker, would hit his second home run of the season, as he went 1 for 5 with an RBI and a run for himself. For the Angels, their goated center fielder, Mike Trout, would go 2 for 3 with an RBI and a run, as he hit his first home run of the season. And then other than him, their shortstop, Jose Iglesias, would go 2 for 4 with an RBI and a run. With this win, the Los Angeles Angels and the Houston Astros are now 4-1. The Astros picked up their first loss of the season. The Angels picked up their 4th win. They both sit on top of the American League West, as they sit a game and a half ahead of the 3rd place Seattle Mariners at the moment. Jumping really quickly to what's going on in Oakland. The Oakland A's hosted the defending champ Los Angeles Dodgers, And the Oakland A's still have yet to pick up a win. They picked up their 5th loss of the season, which currently leads the majors because the Atlanta Braves didn't get to play yesterday. But for the Oakland A's in this matchup, the loss would go to their starting pitcher, Frankie Montas, who allowed 7 earned runs in 2.2 innings pitched. Their center fielder, Mark Canha, would go 2 for 5 with an RBI and a run. He was the only Oakland A's player with more than 1 hit, as their elite third baseman, Matt Chapman, would go 1 for 4 with an RBI for himself. For the Dodgers, their starting pitcher would be Dustin May. He allowed no earned runs and 2 hits in 6 innings pitched as he struck out 8 batters on the day. Their elite right fielder, Mookie Betts, would go 1 for 4 with a run on the day. Their elite shortstop, Corey Seager, would go 1 for 5 with 3 RBIs. Their third baseman, Justin Turner, would go 2 for 6 with 2 RBIs and a run. Their designated hitter, Max Muncy, would go 3 for 4 with 2 runs on the day. And then their left fielder, Zach McKinstry, will go 3 for 4 with 3 RBIs and a run for himself. With this win, the Los Angeles Dodgers are now 4-1. They now hold the best record in the National League West, and they are sitting 1 game ahead of the second place San Diego Padres as they sit on top by themselves. With this loss, the Oakland A's are now 0-5 as they hold the worst record in the American League West. They now sit 4 games behind the Houston Astros and the Los Angeles Angels in the division. Jumping out to San Diego, the San Diego Padres hosted the San Francisco Giants, and the Giants were able to pull off a 3-2 win as the score was tied going into the 7th inning. But eventually it would come down to a home run from Mike Yastrzemski, his first of the season, to give the Giants their 2nd win of the season. For the Padres, the start would go to Morejon. He would only pitch 4 innings as he struck out 2 batters and only gave up 2 runs. Their elite shortstop, Fernando Tatis Jr., would go 0 for 2 as he struck out 1. Their second baseman, Jake Cronenworth, would go 3 and 5. Their elite third baseman, Manny Machado, would go 1 for 4 on the day. Their only player for the Padres that drove runs in was their catcher, Victor Caratini, who finished 1 for 2 with 2 RBIs on the day. For San Francisco, their right fielder Slater went 2 for 5. Donovan Solano went 2 for 4. Other than him, not much was going on for San Francisco. But overall, with this win, they are now 2-2 on the season. Looking out into the NL West, they now hold the 3rd best record in the division as they sit 1.5 games behind the Los Angeles Dodgers. With this loss, the San Diego Padres are now 3-2. They hold the 2nd best record in the NL West as they sit 1 game behind the Dodgers. Last but not least, jumping out to Seattle, the Seattle Mariners hosted the Chicago White Sox. The White Sox picked up their 2nd win of the season, scoring 5 of their 6 runs in the 4th and 5th inning and blanking the Mariners 6-0. For the Seattle Mariners in this matchup, the loss would go to their starting pitcher, Justice Sheffield, who allowed 4 earned runs in 5 innings pitched as he struck out 5 batters. The right fielder, Mitch Haniger, would go 2 for 4. He was the only player that had more than 1 hit, as the White Sox only allowed 3 hits all day. The win would, of course, go to their starting pitcher, Carlos Rodon, who allowed no earned runs and 2 hits in 5 innings pitched. He struck out 9 batters in his 5 innings. Their elite first baseman, Jose Abreu, the reigning American League MVP, would go 1 for 5 with a strikeout. Their third baseman, Yoan Moncada, would go 2 for 5 with a run. Their designated hitter, Yermi Mercedes, would go 3 for 2 with 2 runs. Their catcher, Yasmani Grandal, would go 2 for 4 with 3 RBIs and 2 runs himself. And with this win, the Chicago White Sox are now 2-3. Looking at the American League Central, they now have the 4th best record as they sit 1.5 games behind the Minnesota Twins and the Kansas City Royals. With this loss, the Seattle Mariners are now 2-2 as they now hold the 3rd best record in the American League West. They now sit 1.5 games behind the Houston Astros and the Los Angeles Angels at this moment, and that's what the MLB is currently looking at. That's what it's currently looking like right now. Looking what it's like going into today's matchups. The first matchup will take place at 1 o'clock as the Detroit Tigers will host the Minnesota Twins. At 4:07, the Angels are going to host the Houston Astros as Zach Greinke looks to get a 2nd win with the Astros. At 6:35, the New York Yankees are going to host the Baltimore Orioles as their lead starting pitcher, Garrett Cole, looks to get his 1st win of the season. At 6:40, the Cincinnati Reds are going to host the Pittsburgh Pirates. Right before that, at 4:05, Max Scherzer, Washington's goated starting pitcher, looks to make his 2021 MLB debut versus the Atlanta Braves. At 6:40, the Miami Marlins are going to host the St. Louis Cardinals. At 7:05 on prime time, the Philadelphia Phillies are going to host the New York Mets as Marcus Stroman looks to make his season debut. At 7:10, the Boston Red Sox are going to host the Tampa Bay Rays as Glass now looks to get his second start. At 7:40, the Chicago Cubs are going to host the Milwaukee Brewers. At 8:05, the Texas Rangers are going to host the Toronto Blue Jays. At 8 o'clock, the Colorado Rockies are going to host the Arizona Diamondbacks. At 9:40, the Oakland A's are going to host the defending champions Los Angeles Dodgers as their goated starting pitcher Clayton Kershaw looks to make his second start of the season. At 10:10, the Seattle Mariners are going to host the Chicago White Sox as Lucas Giolito looks to pick up his first win of the season as well. And then last but not least, at the same time, at 10:10, the San Diego Padres are going to host the San Francisco Giants as Yu Darvish looks to get his first win with the Padres. That's what baseball's looking like, and then that's what everything's looking like. With that said, I'm going to jump to the NHL just to give a quick look into what the NHL is looking like. And of course, as a disclosure, every team has to play within their own division to limit travel because of COVID. So of course, looking into yesterday's games, starting in Canada, the Winnipeg Jets were able to beat the Ottawa Senators 4-3 as they scored 3 of their goals in the second period to pick up their 23rd win of the season. In this game, the Winnipeg Jets now sit 6 games behind the Toronto Maple Leafs in the North Division as they sit in second place. Jumping out to Montreal, the Canadiens beat the Edmonton Oilers 3-2 in overtime to pick up their 17th win of the season. With this win, the Canadiens now sit 4th in the table as they sit 12 games behind the first place Maple Leafs with 4 games left to play. Mathematically, they very well still can catch them. Jumping out to Calgary, the Calgary Flames hosted the North Division leading Toronto Maple Leafs and led by their center Austin Matthews 2 goals. The Maple Leafs were able to pick up their 26th win, beating the Flames 5-3. With this win, they sit very comfortably on top of the North Division, 6 points ahead of the Winnipeg Jets, like I just said. Jumping out to the East Division, the Boston Bruins hosted the Philadelphia Flyers, and the Flyers were able to pull off a 3-2 overtime win to pick up their 18th win of the season. With this win, the Philadelphia Flyers now sit 5th in the East Division as they trail the Washington Capitals by 13 points in the table. Jumping out to the West, the St. Louis Blues hosted the West-leading Las Vegas Golden Knights, and after the Golden Knights put up 4 in the second period to finish their 6-goal onslaught, they would beat the St. Louis Blues 6-1 to pick up their 25th win of the season. With this win, the Las Vegas Golden Knights now sit 2nd in the West Division as they now trail the Colorado Avalanche by 4 points in the table. Speaking of the Avalanche beat the Minnesota Wild 5-4 as 4 of their 5 goals came in the second period. With their 26th win of the season, the Avalanche are on a 5-game winning streak. That's the best streak in the division as they now sit 4 points ahead of the Las Vegas Golden Knights with 1 more game played. And then jumping out to Los Angeles, the Kings hosted the Arizona Coyotes. And the Coyotes, led by their left winger Bunting, was a hat trick, would win their 19th win of the season. They won their 19th game of the season, and they were able to beat the Kings 5-2. With their 19th win of the season, they now sit 4th in the West Division as they now trail the Avalanche by 13 points in the table. Looking out to what's going on today in hockey, starting off with the primetime matchups. At 8 o'clock, the Chicago Blackhawks are going to host the Dallas Stars on ESPN+. And following that, the San Jose Sharks are going to host the Anaheim Ducks on ESPN+. Outside of the primetime matchups, the New Jersey Devils are going to host the Buffalo Sabres. The New York Islanders are going to host the Washington Capitals as well. At 7 o'clock, one of the games that I missed is going to be on primetime. The New York Rangers are going to host the Pittsburgh Penguins on NBC Sports Network, as of course, Penguins are led by their future Hall of Fame center, Sidney Crosby. At 7 o'clock, the Philadelphia Flyers are going to host the Boston Bruins. The Carolina Hurricanes are going to host the Florida Panthers. Those are 2 of the top teams in the Central Division. The Blue Jackets are going to host the Tampa Bay Lightning, as that's one of the other top teams in the Central. So, of course, the 3 teams are all going to get started together. At 7:30, the Detroit Red Wings are going to host the Nashville Predators, and that's virtually everything that's going on with hockey. leaving the North American continent, just to give a little bit of context into what's going on in the rest of the world. The only big game coming, because yesterday was Monday, the only big game really came in La Liga, and in that matchup, Barcelona was able to beat Real Valladolid 1-0 as they scored in the 90th minute from Ousmane Dembele to pick up 3 points in the table. With this win, Barcelona now sits second in La Liga, 1 point behind Atletico Madrid in the table, and they now sit 2 points ahead of Real Madrid as the season's ticking really close to the end. Thanks to Atletico Madrid's loss, but Barcelona is closer to the top of the table than they've ever been all season. And looking forward to what's going on today, because of course today is Tuesday. This is the first day of UEFA Champions League quarterfinal matchups. So at 3 o'clock, Manchester City will host Borussia Dortmund for the very first leg. Manchester City, of course, is coming into this game as they are the top teams in the Premier League at the very moment. They sit 14 games ahead of second place Manchester City, just to show where their gap is. Looking at where Borussia Dortmund sits, they are the 5th best team in the German league as they now sit 21 points behind Bayern in the table. So that's the first game. And then at 3 o'clock, Real Madrid, who are currently sitting as the 3rd best team in Spain. They are currently sitting 3 points from the top behind Atletico Madrid and 2 points behind Barcelona. They are going to host Liverpool at 3 o'clock. Looking at where Liverpool is sitting in the Premier League, Liverpool is currently sitting 7th in the table as they are now sitting 25 points behind first place Manchester City, just to show where they are. Those are the 2 big games to look out for in Europe. And once all of today's matchups are done, I will come back to you tomorrow on Wednesday, April 7th, 2021, with the review of today's matchups. Thanks once again for listening to all 45 minutes of my piece. I hope all is well, and I will catch you with a new episode after this, and with another installment of just another daily episode once all of these exhibitions are done tomorrow morning. Thanks once again for listening to my piece, and peace out. I'll catch you tomorrow.